I don't think he owns a pair of wingtip shoes. So let's just leave him alone, and hopefully he doesn't screw anything up.
I didn't know we had that in common. When I was working corporate for Humana in downtown Louisville, I got rid of the tie rule. It used to be mandatory. You had to wear a tie. So I would go in wearing mock turtlenecks. That was my compromise. And the CEO, David Jones, I'll never forget him. He stopped me in the elevator once. He says, "Why is it that you think you're exempt from wearing ties?" I said, "But you're saying it's mandatory." I said, "The girls don't have to wear ties." He said, "Well, they're girls." I said, "Well, they don't have to wear ties. So that's, I'm not going to wear ties." I said, "When you start making the girls wear ties, I'll wear ties." And I said, "If you want me to wear a dress, I would rather wear a dress than to wear a tie. So if you want to enforce that rule, you let me know."
Those calves.
Then we did away with the tie rule, and nobody had to wear ties at Humana anymore. And that was back in the early 1990s. But I didn't know that I don't own a tie. I wore a tie to Cornette's wedding, and that was it. But that leads me to my question. And you're welcome to speak any way about this you want. Why did Jimmy dislike you so much? And Christopher brought up a good point. Why would Eric Bischoff care? And tell him the spin you put on it.
Jim was always convinced that you hated him and that you had that, like, you would stay up at night thinking about him. And my thought was, Jim is the guy in charge, the second in command of developmental. It would be like if Vince McMahon spent his nights wondering what Dwayne Bruce was doing, and just in anger at Dwayne Bruce. And I'm like, I can't imagine that Eric Bischoff has given you a second thought in years.
I never did. And, to this day, it baffles me. Did you guys happen to see the table for three?
Yeah,
we did. Yes.
Yes. And I'm glad you brought it up.
I mean, and I'm not here to bury Jim. I actually think
I do that.
I would probably get along with him.
Yeah.
I mean, he's fucking weird. He says stupid shit and he's outrageous, but he's also really smart
and very funny
and very entertaining.
And
unbelievable
memory when it comes to wrestling.
And there's a lot about Jim's perspective that when I read it, once I get through all the ridiculous shit that he says, at the core of a lot of what, Jim believes, I also believe I may have a different,
way to get there,
adjunct kind of additional thought about it. Mm-hmm. But, basically Jim and I probably see things more similarly than we don't.
Yeah.
But here's what, to answer your question. And if you saw Table for Three, which is why I brought that up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Jim has always believed certain things that other people told him.
Mm-hmm.
There is little difference in many respects, unfortunately, between Jim and Dave Meltzer. Dave Meltzer is a purveyor of shit that people feed him. He's like a recycling system for wrestling bullshit.
And used to absolutely adore Cornette with a passion. When Jimmy was fired from OVW, Meltzer quit writing about us. But when Jimmy was there, we'd get these glorious reviews. We're one of the best wrestling shows on the planet for what we are. And then when Jimmy left, we never heard another word from Meltzer about our show, even though
and that's because Jim and Dave were like symbiotic kind of, dirt buddies. They both lived off of what I call the little birds. Did you guys ever see Game of Thrones?
I have not.
I did not see much of it. I only saw a couple episodes, but a lot of people loved it.
All right. So I'm not going to go into the Game of Thrones, but there was a character in that series who was kind of he was a stooge. He was a professional political stooge. Mm-hmm. And the way he remained in power is he had all these little understooges running around listening to rumors and innuendo that they would bring back to the character central stooge, who would then interpret and then relay it to the king or whoever was in charge in order to remain in power. Uh-huh. And this character referred to those little stooges as his little birds. And Dave Meltzer exists only because of the little birds around him that feed him information that he can then interpret. And shape and then republish as fact. Mm-hmm. Cornette's much the same way. And he revealed it. Jim showed his own ass on the table for 3 between him and Michael Hayes and I, when Jim went into the story that I'm sure he's told 100 or maybe 1,000 times about how I was the one who prevented him from creating this invasion angle with OVW and WCW. And I didn't say a fucking word. I sat there and I listened to him, and I'm going, man, you are clueless. You are really fucking clueless, Jim. But I didn't say it.
You were kind enough not to say it. Yeah.